So I'm looking at, okay, when is the first driverless Tesla out there? Anything driverless for Tesla, when do you think that first commercialization might be, even if it's a pilot program?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I think I'm the only person who's going to say what I'm going to say. FSD version 12 is going to come out. It's going to be spread beyond the 15,000 employees that it is today. And I think it's going to be probably second half of this year. It's going to get to the point where it's so good that we're going to feel much more comfortable with it, but it's here. And by the way, the other thing we need to think about the bots is this isn't just a product, right? This is a war between corporations. Okay, who's going to create the most bots? Because bots can create any product, and any product is now in jeopardy in terms of being undercut in price and delivery and so forth, right? So when you look at the bot, there's three things you need to look at. And I keep repeating this because not everybody remembers to think of these three things. And this is what Scott Walter will tell you. Okay, the first thing is you're looking at...
Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I have probably what looks like a familiar face to the majority of the people watching this channel. This is Herbert. Brighter with Herbert is his YouTube channel, and on X covers Tesla topics galore, has amazing guests on. And I wanted to have him on because, I was thinking last week or a couple weeks ago now at this point, I was like, it's been a while since I've even reached back out to Herbert to have him on. And there's so much going on with Tesla and the Tesla spheres. I guess there always is. But I'm super excited to have Herbert on the channel. We're going to cover a variety of topics. I'm going to timestamp all of this. But first and foremost, I just wanted to just thank you for your time for coming on, Herbert. And I hope 2024 so far is treating you well.
Oh, it is actually. The first 4 days of 2024 is going great. Thank you, Yashu. Obviously, you're one of my favorites. You've been on my show many times, and the invite's always open for you because you have a fresh take on what's going on. And, your knowledge of the market and the stock movement for Tesla, that's your space, and I love it. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome. So I asked 2 or 3 weeks ago, I asked all of our Patreon members, I said, I'm having Herbert on. Is there any question requests? Let me know. And this morning, I also asked on X. And really, I mean, the theme of questions, I'm not going to bombard you with all of them pinpointed, but the theme of the question was, who is Herbert? How did you get into Tesla? And why do you care so much? Like a little bit about yourself. Like people really want to know, because you are a great interviewer and you do amazing jobs at poking questions to open up the big themes with your guests. But I think a lot of people would be really interested to know a little bit more about yourself and what got you into Tesla.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Yashu, and I appreciate the audience wanting to know. I've told my story throughout, pretty transparent about it in various shows and others like that. But basically, I'm personally a product manager by background in the tech field, specifically the healthcare analytics field. I've started 3 companies in software, and my passion has always been about product, right? So the person that I admired the most prior to Elon Musk was Steve Jobs, right? This idea that, how do you create the best business, the great product? How do you look at customers? How do you evaluate customer needs? Those kind of things. And so I've built, led from very large corporations to even small startups where you build a product and you start off with nothing, you have an idea, and that's what gets me going. And so my entire life, my interest has always been in technology. So I was very attracted to the whole Silicon Valley thing. And you and I grew up in Vancouver. You are there as well. And in the year 2000, just before, I think you and I have joked around already, but you probably weren't even like...
No, I was born, don't worry.
You were born. But the year 2000 was a dot-com boom and a dot-com crash 2 years later. But my wife basically said, hey, we're here in the US, in Canada, Vancouver. We need to get to where the action is. And so I did move to to San Diego, worked for a startup there, and built products in healthcare, like what doctors' offices would use, what hospitals would use. And then eventually I started my own companies to try to make this a thing. So it's always about love for technology. And as part of that, in 2012, prior to 2012 and 2008, like that, I was really interested in investing in sustainable energy. And in Vancouver, do you remember there was a company, exists today, called Ballard Power, and their idea was buses. that buses could be run by sustainable energy. In their case, I think it was hydrogen
Yeah.
powered electricity. Anyways, it failed. So my investment in that company did not do well.
Oh, yeah.
Discovered Tesla, and my mind was blown, just like blown, when I was listening to Elon Musk explain how an electric vehicle does not have an engine. And
Hmm.
if it doesn't have an engine, then they can have more crumple zone. And so it protects and it becomes a very safe car, especially when you have a heavy battery that allows it to not fall. And then when you don't have an engine, you don't have any parts that needs to be replaced, that you don't, so your service costs are much lower. And it snowballs from there. Like, oh my gosh, it just makes all sense when it comes together. And that's when I said, okay, I've got to invest. And actually what happened was Elon himself stood up,
Hmm.
and I remember very clearly, he said, I'm going to put in $95 million of my own money to reinvest in 2012. And that's
Hmm.
when I said, okay, well, if he's going to put in that much money and this is a total bet, well, then I'll put in a little bit, right? And then I just added, and I added since then.
Wow.
I then, from 2012 to 2020, I slowly became all in on Apple. Like I had my money invested in a number of technology companies. And because I grew up in Canada and I left Canada, I still actually have money in Canada in these RRSPs that
Right.
I cannot sell as I moved and live in the US now.
Oh.
So I am invested in Amazon. I am invested in Apple still. I couldn't sell those, but if I could, I would have sold them. uh,
Wow.
but so I became all in on Apple as the years go on.
Hmm.
Same concept, which is this is a company that is absolutely destroying the competition. It's got a focus on product, which is revolutionizing an existing industry. In the case of Apple, it's mobile phone became smartphone. And so 2007, now I was invested in Apple even before that, right? In the iPod years, just loving the products, knowing that Apple's not just a computer company. And
Hmm.
everybody said they're a computer company, right? They got into iPhone, music, and you knew at that point that this is a lifestyle. They're an innovation company. They're going to be able to create any product that they want. It's going to be successful. They're going to take over industry after industry after industry.
Hmm.
And so when the iPhone came out, 2007, I'm one of those Apple fans. Knew right away that this is going to be a full industry that's going to be replaced. And since then, every year goes by, and I start taking my investment and realizing, why am I not putting more on Apple?
Hmm.
Because Apple is simultaneously the most exciting, the most innovative, the one who has the largest market cap that it can actually take over markets, and at the same time, very safe, large cap, strong balance sheet. And I just thought, okay, it makes sense. And then I was getting a lot of dividends. So at that point, you're making money just invested in Apple. And so I
Hmm.
slowly started becoming all in. I'm not an all in person. And of course, it's not financial advice, and different people are different stages. I'm a very different investor when I was 20s than I am
Hmm.
now in the 40s, now that I'm in the 50s. Very different investor. So it all depends on your timing. There's not one way that works best, but that's what happened to me. And then you discover Tesla, and you start hearing about what Tesla's doing. You watch the company over the years, and then it's basically Apple again, isn't it? I mean, like there's so many corollaries, right? They're going into
Hmm.
electric vehicle. Electric vehicle is a thing. Every car will become electric vehicle. All cars sold. Tesla's the leader. They've got a strong balance sheet. Now they do now. Of course, many years they weren't, but it's
Yeah.
just that whole focus on product being the best product. So that's how I got into Tesla.
Wow, great summary. So that's a really interesting because Apple and Tesla obviously are compared to with one another within the Tesla bull community. But if you would ask anyone on Wall Street, it's funny because I bet you the consensus would be like not even close. But what's interesting about Tesla is that how fast they've turned the corner from being an unprofitable EV maker with just hopes and dreams to being this cash cow and essentially padding up their balance sheet every single quarter now. I don't want to get into the debate of this too much, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on Tesla stock buyback talk and, of course,
Sure.
dividend, which I think we probably are on the same page with respect to Tesla dividends at the moment. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the corollary of how early Apple adopted a corporate governance strategy of issuing dividends and buying back stock religiously, to which I attribute at least a large percentage of their market cap today to that corporate governance style of buying back stock because, of course, lowering that float, especially with stock-based comp. Do you think Tesla should adopt any of that at the moment or in the next year or two?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, you got to remind yourself that when did Apple do it, right? I think, and I don't remember exact year. Was it 2010, 2012? It was
Something like
really
that. It was
late.
early. Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, something like that. It was early.
Yeah. No, but
Probably 10
it's
or
not late. It was not early. It was late for Apple. Apple was
okay.
around in the 80s, right?
Well, that's
So
fair.
they only did their buybacks once they had over $120 million, $20 billion in the bank.
Okay.
And they were asking, what should I do with this money? Steve Jobs went and talked to Warren Buffett, and he said the best thing is to buy back your own shares. And that's what they ended up doing. Now,
Mhm.
and so for me, it's like Tesla has a lot of cash, right? 26, 23, at one point it was 20 billion, now it's 23. Is it now 26, something like that? It's growing quickly.
Mhm.
And as you expect more cash coming in, can they spend all that money? No. Should they invest it? Sure, into buybacks. But I mean, my point was they could easily do buybacks, but they don't need to. And so for me as an investor, I don't care which they don't. I don't want them to, and I don't need to. I think buybacks is just a kind of a financial instrument. And so clearly what happened to Apple is like a lot of his share price went up from 2010 to now, all because of buybacks. Significantly because of buybacks. It's not because they're growing market share at all, right? It was basically flat. It's now growing services, which is high margins. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, should Tesla do it or don't do it? I don't have a position. It could be like, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
They have the money. They can spend more money than they invest. It's not one or the other. I get that part, but I also don't think they need to do it.
Mm.
So, and in fact, I'm of the camp I would rather them invest into Dojo. I mean, this is going to be a race, and one of the conversations I've been having with people is that Microsoft is investing $50 billion per year. And Tesla is like nowhere near that. They're only investing about 10 billion a year on factories plus AI. They need to pump that up. And so you can easily see the 20 billion go away, even if they just invest all of it on AI, right? Which I would be a
Mm.
fan of.
Interesting. Okay. Good thoughts there. Now, first, I guess heading into 2024 at the moment and talking about stock, I think it's a good launching off point for our conversation just because, I think if we talked, and I'm sure we did at the end of 2022 at any point, we were looking at 2023 with pessimistic eyes to a degree. I mean, I can't put words in your mouth, but it felt like everyone thought, okay,
Mhm.
2023 is probably going to be rough, especially with that steep decline that we had at the end of 2022. Now it's turned out to be a massive year for the stock market. Nasdaq up 50 something percent, Tesla up 130% in 2023. Just kind of insanity if you think about where we were talking about expectations. But heading into 2024, this year, how do you look at 2023 and what happened, and then try to project? I mean, this is all a guessing
Yeah.
game into what you think 2024 might look like.
Sure. So first of all, just a high level, I'm a long-term buy and hold kind of person. And so I literally do not look at the stock price on a daily basis. And I never did, even with Apple. I would just invest my money, and every quarter I'd kind of take a look at where we're at. And I would attend every single earnings call. I would follow the products. I would study the company, but I'm not worried about the stock price. Somebody forces me to come up with a stock price prediction. I don't have one. And the only time if you ever seen somebody say this is Herbert's stock price forecast, I basically would pull out the growth rate for the auto business. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that if the auto business is growing by 50%, then revenue and earnings will eventually get to that growth rate, catch up to that, and eventually that's the stock price. That I'm pretty certain about. Now, I also completely agree with the others who say that if you believe at all that bots and robotaxi and energy are a thing, which I do, why won't you add it in the stock price? It's just that I'm not going to put a number to it. And as you know, I've interviewed so many people with great forecasts and spreadsheets that calculate the TAM and the potential stock price increase because of these businesses. So I'm very fully aware what they are. It's just that personally, I don't find it necessary for me to come up with by this year, the stock's going to be here. So 2023 was a complete hit to all of us. The it's basically macro. So stories of macro. Especially Tesla being in the car business, it's macro driven, and the macro, cash risk on, and cash was flowing like crazy. Stock skyrocketed. The next year or two, stock fell significantly, and the only thing I would say is that 2023 was a real disaster of a year for many of us. But I'm optimistic, right? I always knew that recessions are really short. And so, I said, okay, let's just buckle in. The next 2023, 24, it won't be a thing, but eventually it'll turn around. Eventually it'll be a very positive story and everything will move forward again. And that's exactly what happened. So beginning of 23 last year, people were so negative about the stock. People were just saying how terrible the future is. Don't you know? Margins is now compressed. There's nothing that's going to show up for the company in the next quarters, next year. In fact, many of my counterparts that I talk to in the cyber bulls, some of them are like, I'm going to pull my money out. And I'm like, no, nobody, it can go either way. The macro can turn around. And that's exactly what happened. Macro turned around and S&P 500 is still up. Investments in the AI boom was real. So I think that 24, it's looking like it's going to be a fantastic year because again, macro is driving this. If there's expectations that interest rates are going to get cut finally this year, and the market and stock market is forward looking, so you don't actually have to wait till the interest rates are actually cut to actually see real sales improve because consumers can now actually afford a car that they couldn't before. But it's just the feeling that if the interest rates fall, money is sitting on the sidelines. They want to invest. They're going to invest in a growth stock like Tesla, the story stock. And so the stocks should go up. But in general, it's looking really, really good across the board for Tesla.
Yeah. When you were saying that, immediately I'm thinking last year, all of the arguments that I could put together deductively, interest rates going up, cash going down, credit, people being hit with higher credit repayment fees, everything was logically pointing towards the fact that, okay, this is going to be a tough year. And it turned out to be the exact opposite in terms of stock market, at least. Now, everything I totally agree with you is looking like, okay, interest rates coming down, soft landing, and then it feels like, okay, we're probably going to get slapped in the face the other way now because it feels like, okay, now that everything looks good, watch it be a terrible year in terms of performance. So I don't. It's that, and that's why they call it. The stock market is really a betting game in the short term because at the end of the day, who really knows what's going to happen? But I want to move past that even and talk about all the exciting things that you touched on. Auto market, I think we all talk about all the time, and we can project that. And I don't want to say it's boring because that's the crux of Tesla's business today and the majority of its revenues. But I do want to talk about a lot of expert opinion that you might have conglomerated that other people might not be privy to, because people that watch your channel, of course, would have to watch everything, but you get to talk to these people backstage and whatever it might be. So you get a wide variety of opinions from these experts in these fields. And I want to touch on a lot of points moving forward. The first one being FSD and Robotaxi. I got a question today requested about deployment of this. And anyone that watches my channel knows that, for me, it's like, okay, great. The technology is progressing, but what's the timeline for the first in-world real deployment of Robotaxis, and how does that happen? I just want to leave that out there and get your general thoughts on wherever you want to take it.
Yeah. So I've had Tasha Keeney from ARK Invest, and as you know, they've done a deep dive on Robotaxi and their research on it. ARK Invest research is very well respected, and you really need to spend time to understand what they're saying. And despite their stock performance of ARK itself as a fund, the research is very, very, very well done. And I'm a believer of what they're saying. So I'm all into what Tasha believes. And so, the question about FSD and Robotaxi, right, is it something that others can copy? You have to ask yourself, do you believe that when Elon says, in order to do Robotaxi, you need to have three things, right? You need to have supercomputers, largest in the world. You need to have, billions of miles driven to get the data that you need. And you need to have the team to be able to make this thing work. And if you believe that you need all three, then it's not something that a startup per se can do on their own. And that there is an advantage to having all that data. Now you can question, and I've certainly looked at, this idea. Can you just take videos of YouTube? Can you just do simulation and teach the car to be able to do things? And that's the question. That's the question, right? Whether or not that happens. Regardless of your answer to that, though, the next thing that Tasha will point out is, do you believe that Robotaxi and FSD, is it a winner take most? Or is it going to be something where everybody's going to have a piece of the pie, right? The first mover, the second mover, the third mover, and then it becomes a commodity. So there's many analysts who say, yeah, I get Robotaxi is going to be a big business. It's like going to dwarf the auto business, but it's just going to be a commodity at some point. So I'm not going to give it. No, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is a winner take most scenario, because the one that launches first, the one that gets it out to most markets first, they're going to be able to offer the service to be a lot cheaper than what everyone else can do. Scale matters. In Robotaxi, just take a look what Uber did. Did Lyft take a significant market share? No, they're struggling up, 8% to 15%. At one point, they were 15%. Now they're at 8%. So this is a fantastic lift and is equivalent to Uber in every other way, but they don't have the scale to be able to have, driver option, all these things. So anyways, so if you believe that, winner takes most, which I do, it doesn't matter to me if there's a Chinese competitors or there's other competitors who come into place. What matters is who's going to solve it first. And I believe Tesla will do that. And then after they do solve it, how fast can they roll this out? And by design, theirs is not geofence located. And then now that we're learning a lot of this, what actually happened at Cruise, every time you hear of a competitor, like let's take a look at China, look at their video that they showed that this car can go, autonomously drive itself in a city. You have to ask yourself, was that tele operated? Was there a human sitting in an office somewhere actually looking at the videos and controlling it like a joystick? That's what we discovered that was happening with Cruise. So you have to just take a quick decisive in that. Now, FSD version 12 is a step change and a potentially to solve many more edge cases on its own. And so that's just very promising to me. Let me pause there.
So I'm gonna press you a little bit on timeline, let's say, and everyone's gonna be wrong no matter what they guess. How long do you think this is a feasible And I guess I have to define what the goal is for the timeline. So I'm looking at, okay, when is the first driverless Tesla out there? Whether it's paid or not. And I'm thinking even like Las Vegas, underground boring tunnel, just a hyperloop, anything driverless for Tesla. When do you think that first commercialization might be, even if it's a pilot program? And how far could we be from that?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I think I'm the only person who's going to say what I'm going to say. I'm the only one who believes this. It's a little different than what I've heard other people say. So first of all, FSD version 12 is going to come out. It's going to be spread beyond the 15,000 employees that it is today. And it's going to be, we're all going to get our hands on. And that at some point, and I think it's going to be probably second half of this year, it's going to get to the point where it's so good that we're going to feel much more comfortable with it. And we can see the end of the tunnel. All it needs to be is to be to the point where people will say, it's inevitable and it's happening. And it's already going to happen. It's just a matter of time before it hits the magical 10 times safer than a human kind of number, which they're nowhere near. I think Elon said that we're at 4 times safer than human right now. Then I think what's going to happen. So first of all, you're going to get FSD uptake going up, whether or not they lower the price from $200 a month to even lower. But the FSD uptake will happen simply because of safety. And just like how I can't live without autopilot when I drive from Seattle to Vancouver every month. I love the autopilot feature on the highways. You're going to feel the same way. And so you're going to uptake just an FSD alone, not Robotaxi, just that. Now, then what I think is going to happen next, again, this is the part where I think I'm the only one who's ever says this, is that I think that, let's say I drive from home to work and from work to home, and I've done that 30 times this month, and I've done it 60 times by next month. Tesla might say, for that specific drive from home to work, I got it. And you have Tesla insurance. I'll take liability for you. And you can, if you want, you can, not be as attentive for that ride, just for specifically from that ride, that one specific route. That's what I can see why people think that doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be this whole thing where all of a sudden, we're going to do it for everything. It could be very, very specific to specific things. The very first thing could be highways. That I think they're almost very confident at this point that if they do Tesla insurance, they can guarantee that you're safe.
Yeah.
So, that could be where they start. If you're driving on the highway, you can now
Mhm.
close your eyes and sleep. And if something happens, we'll take liability for it because they know by that point how safe it is.
Interesting. So it's almost like, I have looked into large language models a little bit with like ChatGPT and being able to basically create your own ChatGPT bot for narrowed use cases in scenarios, whether it's internal data analysis or in my case, it was about parsing through copy and advertising, copy and all that sort of stuff and trying to write it in a way that is specific to ways that you want it to spit out. So you're almost like trained this by putting in this external data. But of course, Tesla is doing that at a high level. But what you're saying is a narrow, specific trained use case for A to B that you've done a million times in your specific car and you've driven the same way 20 times this month. And you've done it so many times where Tesla's like, okay, for this case, it's fine. So my question to you then would be, what if Tesla insurance doesn't exist in that state? Can Tesla still,
Yeah, I
let's
don't think
say,
so, right?
push it out?
Not Robotaxi, not this thing, because they need to take the liability for it. They need to be able to be comfortable for it. By the way, we just heard Elon say just very recently that FSD version 12 is fantastic in California, but what we need is different weather conditions.
Yeah.
And so that's implying that it doesn't do as well in different weather conditions. And so that's the same thing. Like if Tesla decided to offer Robotaxi in California, they might be able to do that because they might already be at the point where the safety level is 10 times
Mm.
safer than human.
Yeah.
And then the other thing though is people are saying that there's no need for them to do a piecemeal like this, right? They're just going to wait until it's like all or nothing and it's ready to go or not. So I get that part too. So I'm not 100% saying this has to be the way to go.
Yeah. I would just love it. Like Tesla, of course, like in the loop in Las Vegas. Like we know it's
Yeah.
pretty narrow. Like why
Yeah.
can't they just
They
release
can.
something driverless there? Maybe there's
They
some sort
could.
of red tape. Like I would just love to see that progress that Tesla talks about with metrics and disengagement. Some people measure that per mile, even though that could be a little bit sparse. You know, like launch something super easy that's a win. And that's a
Yep.
real world example for people to try.
I think it's going to happen. Yeah, it will happen.
So it's exciting because, of course, FSD Robotaxi, you talk about different, modeling of stock prices. That really unlocks a large, untapped market today, especially North America. You talk about China a little bit, and there's some competition there, but in North America, it's virtually untapped. And of course, the biggest thing would be that Tesla has is the overnight ability for any car to get it and start operating in a fleet. But then, of course,
Yeah, I
my
will
head
say
immediately
though,
goes to,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I want to point out that again, I'm different than other people in that I've been saying for quite a while now that I think that bot will happen way faster than Robotaxi.
Mm. Well, Herbert, I don't know how you do it, but you've segued me perfectly into our next topic.
Yeah,
So you asked this question to Tasha directly about the bot, and she disagreed with you a little bit on timing of
weird.
which one's going to come first. I'm on Team Herbert on this, by the way. I do agree because if you just think about it, I mean, the technology is the same, but the liability is much less with the bot, especially in specific factory use cases. Let's talk about Tesla Bot. So where are you at with timeline on Tesla Bot? Of course, we know it's
Yeah.
before FST in your
Okay.
case.
So first of all, people need to be very, 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 very specific. And so when you hear statements that I might make or others make, people totally misunderstand it, right? So let's talk about it. So right now, so first of all, I interviewed Scott Walter. I think we've done 24 shows on not only Tesla bot, but every bot out there. There's many bots we can see. We evaluate them, we compare them. We look at the papers that's been written about them. We look at videos and so forth. And so there's a definition of what do I mean by Tesla bot will be in a factory today. It's already there today. I'm not talking about 1,000. We're not talking about it be able to do every single, use case out there. I certainly don't expect the bot to be at home in my home and that consumers are going to buy it for years on end and they're not going to wash the dishes. They're not going to fold laundry. They don't need to do any of that. All they need to do is pick and place. And there is an existing bot today called Digit that is already doing pick and place actively in factories and actually in a pilot program with with Amazon right now. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have any hands. It's just a pincher. And all it does is it goes and grabs a box and it moves it from one location to another, usually only maybe 8 or 10 feet away. And when you evaluate all the jobs available in a factory, there are many jobs that require bots on wheels. And these are jobs where something needs to be moved pretty far distance. It's much better to put a bot on a wheel, and that's what Amazon does. They're basically, I can't remember, some ridiculous number of like 1 million bots, like thousands of bots per day that they're buying just to move pallets, and they're bots on wheels. They're just like little Roombas. Okay. Then there's the need for stationary bots. These are the KUKA bots that every factory has today. And Tesla has this all over the place, right? These are industrial robots. Scott Walter founded 2 of these companies, right? They're just industrial robots that are in stationary, and they grab big pieces and they move it from one place to another place. In order to do that, you need to be it only grabs something at precisely at one place and it puts it precisely to another place. That's how that works. There's a need though for humanoid robots that has about a 6-foot, 10-foot area, and it picks one place and moves it. In this video of Giga Shanghai, and Chinese media went and they did a full tour of Giga Shanghai. I've got the video, you've got the video, we can parse it out. And as you watch the video, there are many places that Scott Walter says, stop. See that human right there? What his job was, there's a cage and there's a little hole in the cage. And his job is to grab this piece, it's a metal piece, but it's something that I can carry, it's a small piece. I grab it, I put it into the window of the cage. I press the button to stop the industrial robot from moving. I put it into that spot, and then that industrial robot grabs where I put it and puts it away. I go back, I move it, and that's all I do all day long, grabbing and placing. That job can be done today with Tesla Bot Gen 2. And even though we just learned that Gen 2 does not have end-to-end ability for the legs, and it still falls quite a bit, it's not yet ready for it to, that's not able to walk reliably all the time. It doesn't matter. For a simple job like that, you can do this. There's a company called Giant AI. Robert Scoble interviewed them, and he actually physically went to their business. Their entire business is a humanoid bot, but it's torso up, no legs. And their entire business is to sell that bot to factories across the world. And all it does is just no legs. It just picks and place. And there's a conveyor belt of things. Think about the, the cookie conveyor belt, and you're grabbing, or apples, let's say, and you're grabbing the apples that are pick and place. That's all their job is. So there are so many jobs today that it can be done today with existing technology today. And I'm not saying hundreds. I'm not, maybe, 20 to 100, maybe 200. Why though can't you already have a few of them in a factory today just to test it out and see if it's working?
And so let's go with that. So where do you think that scales at that point? Is it just going to be Tesla eating their own dog food for a long time with the Tesla bot, lowering costs, increasing margins internally? If that's the case, does the market really recognize Tesla bot really for what it is, or it's just a cost a cost driver? So on that note, then on Tesla bot, when does the market start to realize really what Tesla bot is?
Okay. So a couple of points on that, right? So the first point is that I have been saying that personally, I think that you're not going to see this be sold to consumers for 3 years and longer. So I've had conversations with Warren Redlich, and he's so big on, this being, pilot program by us. We would, us Tesla fans would be able to pilot a human because they need all that data. I just don't see it. There's no need for that. They're going to sell their first 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 bots to their own company. And you heard Tom Drew of Tesla say that when Giga Mexico is up and running and we have 10,000 employees, what if we have 5,000 Tesla bots? He said. He was physically on stage in Investor Day, said that. Okay. And I've got the clip of him saying that. So they've already calculated that maybe they would have 5,000 Tesla bots in Giga Mexico. So they're going to use every bot that they make for their own company. It's going to dramatically reduce the gross margins, the margins required to build cars. And then after that, they're probably going to, involve their suppliers. They have hundreds of 20,000 plus suppliers that they can talk to them and say, you be the first to test this out, because it's a double win for everybody, right? Everybody gets improved. And then from there, just the market for factories and selling it there would be the first thing. Now, here's the thing about this whether or not it's going to impact the stock market. And here's where I'm so bullish on it. It's like, if you think about, okay, so everybody looks at Tesla as a car company, and that's all they think of it. And then they've watched many videos, and I'll say 99% of people have no idea that the car can actually do what it's doing, right? Autopilot and be able to drive itself. Nobody knows that. Even my own family knows that. There was a guy that I met who's a tech guy. He owns 3 Teslas. I met him for coffee one day. He owns 3 Teslas. He had no idea that it has FSD beta on it, that he could test it out. He had no idea. So I know that people don't know this, but at the same time, I also know people who watch all these videos and they're not like going, it's going to happen and I'm going to invest. What I think might happen is a ChatGPT moment is more likely going to happen with 2 scenarios. And the best scenario, I think, is going to be the bot. So when people see the bot, even though it's not being sold to retail, even though it's just still being used, just seeing the bot, because it's a visual that is easy for people to get excited about, and watching this bot move and act like a human. And then they'll realize, piece it up very quickly, and they go, I need to invest in this company, because they will understand that this bot has a tremendous market potential, and it's going to be just crazy for this business who creates this the most. So I think even demos of the Tesla bot could be enough for people to invest in the company. The other scenario that I think could be a ChatGPT moment, I've been saying, is summon and reverse summon. So it's not going to be full self-driving. It's summon and reverse summon. So when people see me drive my car to a Target and it drops me off at the lobby, and then the car finds its own parking spot, and then when I come out with my shopping bags, they see the car weaving along and finding it, because as they're walking in the parking lot and they see this thing driving itself, they'll pull out their phone and they'll videotape it, and then it's going to go in TikTok and go viral, and people going, this car is just driving on its own in the parking lot. I think that could be the ChatGPT moment that visually captures the consumer's mind and realize, oh crap, this car can drive itself.
Interesting. I actually look at it a little bit differently almost, because I look at, okay, ChatGPT, great moment for sure, 100%. But does that really drive investorship? Like, does that really drive market cap? And to me, immediately I think, well, retail base really don't move stocks. What moves stocks is Wall Street coming in. And for me, I immediately, when you said ChatGPT moment, I said, what company was the top beneficiary for the ChatGPT wave that we've seen? And it has to be NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA's stock has skyrocketed because they don't own ChatGPT, but they service that industry, right? They supply that industry, and immediately the parallel I draw in my head is Dojo. If the ChatGPT moment is that, okay, that people realize that this is happening, immediately Wall Street head goes to what company is supplying to make this happen? What company is under the hood? It's like the Levi jeans of the gold rush, right? People that made money in the gold rush weren't the gold rushers. It was Levi jeans supplying all the jeans to everyone. And so immediately I go, the enabler in the market is going to be Dojo. So almost my head now goes to, okay, maybe it's when Dojo starts to get licensed out, or we start to see contracts come in. Where are you at with Dojo? And of course, Tesla's going to eat their own dog food here. This is a real big problem with Tesla sometimes, is that they're so vertically integrated that they're going to eat their own dog food every step of the way, that you're not going to see these external parties with contracts often, other than energy maybe, or maybe FSD eventually right now. Where are your thoughts at with Dojo?
Yeah, so I agree with you there. That's actually a very good point. The reason is because it's very easy for investors, especially the institutional investors, to compare it to Amazon and AWS. They all saw that AWS contributed, the stock price is 4 times what it is now because of it. And it generates $80 billion of profit per year for Amazon because of AWS, right? So Amazon created this data warehouse for their own use. They then start offering it to any consumer, every business, small business, large business, to then rent data center warehouse. When Dojo, which is the largest supercomputer that Tesla has, and they open it up and let people rent the compute, you're absolutely correct. That will go crazy because it's easily understood by the investors, institutional investors. And then what we saw recently in just the kind of the, like, was it a month ago? Alexander Mertz does a great job following the career pages in Tesla and following all the hiring that Tesla's doing. And she noticed that in the career page of Tesla, what they did just last month was they consolidated 8 different pages all into one page. And so now they're hiring for people in the same page. It says work on bots, work on AI, work on Dojo, work on, energy. Like, it's like all in one place. So basically they've collapsed it all to say that now in the Dojo paragraph at the very last sentence, it says we're looking for people to help create APIs to let the world have access to Dojo. And that's a first indication that we actually have from Tesla's own webpage, talking about Dojo as a service. Okay. Now, by the way, it's very likely that XAI is the first customer of Tesla's Dojo and already have a partnership with Dojo for Dojo as a service. That's a separate thing. But okay, so I think that when they announce or they show people that they're actually going to sell Dojo as a service, and then the question that you're saying is that to what extent, how big of a service do they need to have in order for them to have more than what they need for Robotaxi and for bot? And if the timeline is correct, that they actually deliver what they say they're going to deliver, that by the end of this year, it'll be 20 times the compute of what they had in a few months ago. By the end of this year, 20 times. If that's true, this is not only the largest supercomputer in the world, it's not only the 3 largest supercomputer in the world, it dwarfs all supercomputers in the world in terms of, compute. So that's what they're working towards. And like you said, just that alone is big. But it's just question is we don't know yet if it's a real product or not.
Yeah, and I think people should realize the reason why it's so exciting is because, I mean, if you have to boil it down to economics, is that it's so high margin, right? AWS is a small percentage of the revenue, but it's like 50% of their net income, right? And Dojo, I'd imagine, is probably higher margins than even AWS because at the end of the day, you can charge what you want in a monopoly almost. And so, Dojo quite simply understood, like if you make $1, Tesla's netting 80 cents on that dollar. And if you're getting a multiple of 30, 50, 100 times on your stock, that operating leverage often is what's called that with Dojo is just, it's padding the operating margin for Tesla. So it flows all the way to the bottom. And of course, this is also the case with FSD.
I want to add something as well that I interviewed Brian Wang, and Brian Wang is pretty incredible. He did this whole analysis, and he compared it to Amazon AWS, and we showed that there is actually more than Dojo. Forget Dojo for a second. These are supercomputers. He calculated all the cars that Tesla has. This is edge computing. Every car that we own, I own a Tesla, right? It has a chip in it. And if I'm not driving that car, if I chose to, I can let Tesla have access to that compute power and be able to sell it to other computers, and I can make some money. So all of a sudden, I think he calculated anywhere from $250 per year to $2,000 per year that I, as a car owner, could make if I decide to rent my compute, the compute sitting on my computer out there. Anyways, he calculated that just that alone will be $80 billion a year, which is the same as what Amazon's making. And in fact, the margin for for Tesla is 4 times more than what Amazon's getting with their AWS. And so then when you say that AWS contribute to 4 times the Amazon stock price, he's just saying that, just give that some thought.
Immediately my head goes to, like, that's essentially what we do with crypto mining, right? Crypto mining is essentially taking unused computer processing power, graphics power that you have, and monetizing it in a way, like, not everyone has to do it, but if you want to, you can mine it. And actually might be wrong on this, but I remember like years and years ago, there was this article about people mining crypto on their Teslas. So, whether or not this is a V2G type-esque program that Tesla can set up for mining, but that's an interesting thought experiment for sure. It's funny. We talked about everything, and we have we've barely even covered autos. I'm not going to bore everyone by covering autos because I think the recipe is already written. We're just waiting for this thing to essentially slow cook, right? What are you most excited about out of it? Could be anything that we haven't talked about, but it could be energy, it could be Dojo, it could be FSD, Tesla bot. Like, what's the most immediate excitement that brings you joy when you talk about Tesla every day?
It is a bot. I've done 23 shows on it. It's something that I'm so excited about because, it is probably, like, some people are saying, which is larger, AI or bots? And eventually AI will be larger than bots. But bots is going to change the world. It's just like AI. It's like both of them are going to change the world dramatically to what you understand it to be. But in terms of the truly understanding how it's going to generate the most money, it's bots, right? The bots, as we know, is going to replace labor. It's just so logical, the business model for it. And you already can see that it's there. So when you look at the bot, there's three things you need to look at. And I keep repeating this because not everybody remembers to think of these three things. And this is what Scott Walter will tell you. Okay. The first thing is you're looking at locomotion. You look at the humanoid form and its ability to move. That's pretty straightforward. The second thing is the fingers and the hands and the dexterity of the hands. And if you look at that, and you can look at all the competitors out there, only a couple of them are working on hands. Many of them, you might see digits like this, but they don't move. And so the ability for the Tesla bot to be able to manipulate objects, and the reason why it's important is, do you need the bot to grab a drill and to make the drill? Right. Can you take a bot to grab a screw and screw it into a bolt? Right? You have to be able to define dexterity. These kind of things opens up the ability for this bot to do anything that a human can do if it can have full control of the hands. And very few competitors out there actually even have hands. And secondly, the ability to really control that hands. And then the third thing is the brains. In order to do the brains, you need to have supercomputers. So anytime you see a bot competitor out there, the first question we ask is, do they have a data center? Do they have supercomputers? Do they have the staff and team that have the brightest minds in the world to create neural networks? And then do they have the data to be able to feed that, to teach it? Now, I that's the part I'm wondering, is that there's now science and there's research that shows that you can just take a video from YouTube and teach a bot to do things. So that part I'm not as strong in, that you need to have that much data. This is a big contention for us Tesla people, because we think that Tesla owners, we think that you need to have all this data, and only having real world data could you have real world AI, which is what Elon is saying. You need the real world AI to create baby AGI, and an baby AGI will be able to actually understand the world. And so none of these other competitors have the ability that if you open up the bot and press turn on, it will be able to look around and know, oh, that's a desk, that's a phone, that's a light, that's 2 feet away. I can open that door by turning the knob this way, or in that door, I need to push it. Only Tesla would be able to have that, to be able to understand its environment and know it, because it's the same thing as what their car is using to understand the environment that it's driving in. And so none of these guys have this. But anyways, it is so, like I said, you don't even need to have that. You just need basic stuff to be able to get this thing working. So for me, it's like, and then as you can see, Tesla created the bot for mass production. And Elon said that by November, which is a month ago, the Tesla design actuators will be at the point that we can do scaling, mass scaling. That's what he said. That was his words. So it was like they were very disappointed last year because some people thought that there should be 1,000 bots already. And then they laughed at people like Randy Kirk or Scott, who said 500 bots. But what they are missing is that, well, yeah, but so we're off by 6 months, but in 2024, it's going to be ready for mass scaling. And let's say even if I'm off by a year, let's say it's not 2024, it's 2025. I guess I'm just laughing at those people who literally 9 months ago would text back and say things and say to you, are you kidding? The bot is, not in my lifetime. Or sure, it'll happen in 10 years. 9 months later, you talk to them today and they'll change their tune. They'll go, yeah, sure, it's here, but maybe 3 to 5 years from now. 2 months later, 3 months later, when you say AI day 3, and then the next demo that Tesla does is going to be on the brains again, and they're going to show you how hopefully some massive improvement in the ability for this bot to think and the bot to react and make actions and be able to do things. And if that will blow people's minds if they can do that in the next 3 months.
Herbert, hearing you talk about Tesla bot like this is getting me so jazzed up. It's like, there's very few people that have talked to as many experts that
Yeah.
as you have on this, and
Yeah.
you get it from all sides. You get it from people that might be a little more pessimistic on timeline, expectations, specifications, and then the alterable side of this, which I think, it's good to have a balance between. But wow,
Oh, and I'm
it's
interviewing Brett Adcock, who's the CEO of Figure, fantastic humanoid robot. They've started talking about using AI as well to do, and I think that these guys will be partnering. So many of these humanoid bots out there, they'll partner with Google DeepMind. The OpenAI CIO was interviewed, and he said we purposely decided not to get into humanoid bots because in order to succeed in humanoid bots, he said, you would need to have thousands, tens of thousands of bots, and you just need to commit to actually getting into that business. Having said that, they're partnering. They actually invested in a humanoid robot business. And so these guys will partner, and you'll put the brain attached to the bots, but it's here. And by the way, the other thing we need to think about the bots is this isn't just a product, right? This is a war between corporations. Okay, who's going to create the most bots? Because bots can create any product, and any product is now in jeopardy in terms of being undercut in price and delivery and so forth, right? If I have 1,000 bots in my factory versus you, I'm going to win that business. But it's a war between countries. And so you've got China just 3 weeks ago announce that they are going to they have a top initiative for their government to make sure that we are the leader in humanoid robots by 2027. So you got the full might of the government, and they need to, because China is, the manufacturing hub of the world, and they have the most to lose if they don't get into bots, because right now they're using their cheap labor and the factories are there. All of that can go away in an instant if they don't at least get into bots. When you have the government funding this, supporting this industry, and then you've got, the US and I don't know what the government's doing here. You know what I mean? Like it is something that is that big of a deal that countries need to get into this and support companies that do it, because it is so important, right? It's like, it's going to change the world. It's going to change society. It's going to change every business. And so for me, I think of Tesla, and I think if I were Tesla, I would fund AI. Dojo is my top priority, which then feeds bots, because more ahead of what everybody else thinks, which is the compact car. I think that the bot that Tesla does, even if it's a year later or a year ahead of what, if they invest and focus on this, can change every business that Tesla's doing. The car business, the energy business, anything that they're touching and doing will be transformed because of their bots, right? And so you should be working on bots.
Well, I mean, China also declared SpaceX as an unprecedented challenge a couple of weeks ago. Of course, they're looking at Elon and Tesla with Tesla Bot. The entire auto industry hates Elon, what they're doing with electrification. Talk about oil and gas and the mafia there with OPEC. They probably don't like Tesla Energy and the fact that, you talk about electrification of everything. And then you talk about AI and the AI overlords and XAI. I mean, it's no shock that everyone hates Elon. If anyone has any power, they probably hate Elon and what he's doing.
And the good news is that Tesla is in every one of these businesses. If I asked you, what is the largest business you can possibly think of, the largest market that the world ever has, you would have first said it's pharma, it's energy, it's auto. Those are the top 5. And then all of a sudden, we've got AI. It's going to dwarf all of these. And so you just want a piece of that pie. AGI can replace the white collar workers, and then bots is going to replace the blue collar workers. And so then bots and AI become the, like, I can't think of a single other market that's larger than bots or AI, the two together separately. And here you have Tesla, a leader in all of this. The only one that they're not doing right now is pharma. And then the other thing I want to remind people is that if I took a look and mapped it all out, as I do with, all this, every 2 years, Elon creates a brand new company. Every 2 years. And so he just launched XAI just a few months ago. He bought Twitter just a year ago. There's no reason to think, and I don't know why people can't put this in their head, that Elon and Tesla will get into a new company, new business in a couple of years. It's going to be probably home. It's going to be some sort of like, reinventing the home. Maybe it's going to be food. They're going to get into all these new businesses. And so that's why, like, why are you betting against like an innovation and a company that's innovation getting to so many industries that are massive and that they're leaders in? So
yeah. Well, you heard it here first. If Tesla opens up a food company, it was Herbert that predicted
let
it.
me share something with you with that.
Yeah.
Last year I was at Giga Texas, the Giga Rodeo party. And I went to the secret party at the end there, and Elon was dancing, and so was Franz, and so was his brother, Kimball. And so I had a chance to walk up to Elon and talk to him. And the question I had, and of course, jokingly in the flight there, I was going, what if I meet Elon? What question would I ask? And I had already prepared it, that I would ask him a question about what is the first principle thinking to solving world hunger? At that time, a year ago, remember, there was that whole debate about, why isn't Elon dealing with world hunger? So I asked him the question. He answered, given the same standard answer he's been giving to everybody, which is, hunger, food is not a calorie deficit. There's enough food out there. Okay. Then he stopped and he laughed and he didn't complete that sentence. Then I met with Kimball and I asked Kimball straight on, are you and your brother working to solve world hunger? Because he, as you know, Kimball's entire career, entire focus in life is food. And he said, yes, straight out, yes. So it's my belief that if you think about Mars and you think about, this issue of world hunger that's happening today, that there's going to be some sort of local production of food is necessary, right? I don't know if it's 3D printing of food or something like that. But I guarantee you, based on what I heard from them, that they are going to do food. That could be the next thing that they work on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's that supercharger restaurant tour rumor that was going around.
Why
I
are
think
they
one
doing that?
opened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
weird.
Interesting. Well, always great chatting with you. Thank you so much for having me on. Everyone, go follow Herbert, Brighter with Herbert on YouTube, Herbert Tong on X/Twitter. Any last parting words for the audience on how to follow you, your journey, anything like that?
No, not really. Appreciate this very much. Yeah, this just on X at Herbert Ong and then on my YouTube channel. Please follow. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Everyone go follow. I'll throw the links in the description. Leave a comment down below as to your thoughts. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Yashu. Appreciate you.